Hey, Nicole Huntsman here from moderncosmic.com. I'm going to answer a question that I had about retrograde planets in the natal chart from Jada B. So let's talk about retrogradation. What does that mean? What is a retrograde planet? What does it even mean, right? So from our perspective here on Earth, retrogradation is when we see a planet, it appears to be moving backwards through the ecliptic or through the zodiac signs, okay? Now, it's not actually moving backwards because all of the planets follow their path and move in the direction they're supposed to be moving in. All right. It's just like when you're on the freeway, and I compare it to if you're on the freeway and you're driving next to another car and you guys are both going the same speed, but perhaps you are going slightly faster than the other car. And so from your perspective, you're in this car, it looks like this other car's going backwards. Okay. They're not actually going backwards. It's just relative to your vantage point. Okay. So that's retrogradation. All of the planets at some point, planets, and we're not talking about the moon, of course, but all the planets do retrograde at some point during their orbit relative to us. Now, let's talk about in the birth chart what this means. Now, my experience with retrograde planets with individuals, as far as how it's expressed in the personality, I have not had really consistent experience with this always playing out the same way as far as the personality, the expression through the personality, okay? Now, what is really interesting is when you look at a progress chart, right? Because then, of course, if you're looking at a progress chart, a progress chart is when we make a chart for every year of your life. We take the birth chart, say you were born on August 1st, okay? And now in real life, you're 30 years old. So your progress chart, we would have gone 30 days from August 1st, the actual day you were born, the same year, 1980, let's say, 30 days from that, and created a chart for that day in 1980 or whenever you were born. That would be your 30-year-old progress chart, okay, secondary progressions. So obviously, because it's only been 30 days, the outer planets haven't hardly moved at all. And then, of course, the moon will have moved, and your personal planets will have moved a bit. And if you've got a planet that was retrograde at the time you were born, that means it's going to be moving backwards through your progress chart, right? It's moving backwards. So rather than it moving forward to the zodiac, it's moving backwards, okay? Depending on when it went direct. So if it had gone direct back in 1980 on, 5 days after your actual birthday, then in your progress chart that will be reflected. So you'll see it start moving forward on your your 6-year progress chart. It will start moving forward again. Okay, so now the suggestion is when you have a retrograde planet in your birth chart, that particular planet has a little struggle to express itself. Or you just think about the transit. So when you have Mercury retrograde, we have these issues of communication not really working the way it's supposed to necessarily. It's that time where we revisit things. It's a good time to revise things, to rethink, to use RE, right? But not necessarily a great time to start a new project that requires clear communication or that requires this ability to check all the details, okay? Now, very important to notice the zodiac sign. And I'll give you an example. Mercury was retrograde just as a transiting planet. It was last year. And it was retrograde and it was in Pisces. And I did a little video and or something on Facebook, and I just said, don't be surprised if you drop your phone into the toilet, or something with your mode of communication and actual water clashing with one another, which would be like dropping your phone in the toilet. My son actually dropped my phone in a mud puddle like the day after I posted that, so that was really funny. But so you got to look at the zodiac sign, and then because that tells you about the expression of this particular planet, right? The planet is just a verb, and the zodiac sign is kind of the adverb, so it sort of flavors the way that you'll express it. So let's say we've got someone who's Mercury, and their Mercury is in, let's say it's in Aries, okay? And it's a retrograded Mercury in their birth chart. This would suggest, in my mind, I would interpret this as someone who was especially direct in their communication. I mean, all Aries Mercuries are direct in their communication. They're impatient. They don't like to wait for you to respond. You know, they can talk over you and they're in a hurry. But it would sort of really enhance that, and it would bring out more. It's like the retrogradation sort of can bring out the shadow side, or the negative aspects of the adverb, so to speak, or of the zodiac sign. So like I said, in Aries, it would give a Mercury that was really impatient, that perhaps could be rude with their words, or overly direct, or them's fattened words, you know, just someone who's argumentative, that kind of thing. And, you know, it's interesting on the flip even, you got to look at the aspects that are being made to the Mercury in the birth chart as well, because let's say we have someone who has this Mercury in Aries and it's receiving, I don't know, it's receiving like a square from Mars, and that would definitely suggest they'd be aggressive in their communication style. Perhaps it's softened by the moon. Maybe it makes a trine to the moon, then they could be very passionate speakers. And there's a little bit of a selfishness when you put Mars to the moon, and especially in Aries, so they could just passionately speak what they think, regardless of how it might affect anyone else's feelings, you know, etc. And retrograde in particular is going to be even more, like I said, aggressive, or even more, if it's a Pisces Mercury retrograde, perhaps it's someone who really has a hard time with math or with like linear thinking, you know, they're more spiritual and intuitive and mentally kind of go with the flow, so to speak. That's your typical kind of Mercury. Man, people with Mercury and Pisces, I just actually had lunch with a friend of mine. They have this gift. They a lot of times do have psychic and intuitive gift, or at least the ability, also the hands, because Mercury rules the hands, you know, this ability to heal through the hands, this kind of thing. But it could be, if it's retrograded Mercury, this could be someone who really struggles with knowing what's real and what's not. It could be an issue of being a little delusional in a way, or sort of easily tricked or gullible, or, you know, do you see? So it sort of brings out the shadow side of the zodiac sign. So really pay attention to the zodiac sign. That gives you details. Venus, for example, Venus retrograde. This can be people who, with their love life, they can have some difficulties, whether it's in finding a partner, whether it's in really knowing how to use pleasure in a positive way. It could be someone who overdoes things, like Venus in Sagittarius or something. So Venus, you know, it could be, like I said, sort of not knowing how to use pleasure properly, or it depends on what that Venus is in, the sign. So if it's in an earthy sign, it could be, well, if it's like in, for example, Taurus, or one of the zodiac signs that we naturally associate with being slightly hedonistic, or that's why I said Sagittarius, where they kind of can overdo things. But then if you put it in something like Virgo and it's retrograde, this could perhaps be someone who gets very caught up in details and overanalyzes things and worries about things too much, and doesn't allow themselves to enjoy something because they're always picking it apart, or, you know, being analytical. If it's in Capricorn, that could be someone who just restricts themselves from pleasures, or from romantic relationships, or you know, really enjoying that part of life. Okay, Mars, if Mars is retrograde, Mars is going to, that's your energy to do something. It's your physical body. This could, again, depends on the zodiac sign that it's in, but this could give someone it's kind of like, it's either going to give them too much aggressive energy or too much like hyperactivity. Look at if it's connected to Uranus or to Aquarius, or like any of the or Gemini, or Virgo would be like nervousness, but like you know, there's just too much of that go thing happening. And if it's perhaps in a sign that is like a water sign, there's an emotional element attached to the way that this person's physical energy runs. So I have a Mars in Cancer, so if it was retrograde, perhaps it would be someone who could even be like bipolar, even, you know, like where your body, but it's almost more physical, like physically lots of energy, and then, you know, no energy, and very much tied into mood, that type of thing. So it depends on the zodiac sign. So I hope that was helpful. And remember, when you're looking at progressions, that's where you really start to see, if you've got retrograde planets, you'll see it in your progressed charts each year. You'll see those those planets will be moving backwards rather than forward. Overall, my experience though with reading people, it's not one of the first things I look at, because we have so many things that we can look at. We have to decide the most important factors. We look at those first, and then these other little elements can come in, and oh, you do have this retrograde Venus, so that might explain. You know, if I saw someone who had a Venus that was highly aspected, then I'm going to really probably look more closely, and that retrogradation will come into play a little bit more in the interpretation of the delineation of the chart. So hope that answers your question, Jada B. And have a good one. Thanks for posting your comment. Okay.